This week's episode is brought to you by Kyle Hanks, Jordan O'Hara, Amber Kilmer, Freighter VS, and Ashton Forbes, the same one we interviewed just last week. Thank you, Kyle Hanks, Jordan O'Hara, Amber Kilmer, Freighter VS, and Ashton Forbes. It's with the generous support of listeners just like you that helps keep our witch coven of were-rabbits stocked with fresh carrots, charged battery packs for our nuclear accelerator beams and our pan-dimensional antimatter laser guns, and a supply of neutron displacement grenades that we use to covertly ambush Illuminati agents in hell dimensions beyond imagination, to steal back the secret documents and deliver them directly into your ear holes, encoded into the format of this show to which you are now listening. If you'd like to help sabotage the Illuminati or just hear the second half of this episode, please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 will not only get you the extended edition of this episode, but our entire library of extended shows now integrated with Spotify. But that's not all. I'll send you a 5x5 high quality final sticker of our Big Bunny Baphomet cover art and instant access to our secret Discord server where we debunk reality and share pictures of our cats. As a reminder, subscribing to our $20 tier gets you not just access to our show notes, an additional holographic sticker as well, but our tarot readings monthly with yours truly if you're into that kind of thing. Special thanks to our ongoing support we've received for Heka Astra's GoFundMe. We are so grateful to all the people who've donated so far. With your help, we've been able to assist our beloved show host escape her slumlord property owner that evicted her short notice just prior to the rapidly oncoming and cold Canadian winter. Without your help, she would be homeless and in severe danger right now. If you're so inclined, we would be grateful to get closer to our pledge goal to help Heka Astra get some much needed weatherproofing on her RV and begin paying it off so she can make the great crossing to be with the people she loves. In this week's show, we kick off the Halloween season with a deep dive on the culturally diverse phenomena of the werewolf. We look at its profoundly ancient origins and how it evolved into the beloved horror trope we enjoy today. In the free section of the show, we discuss its ancient association with war, rites of passage into manhood, its adoption into pagan mythology, the medieval Christian witch hunts, and the important role it played in secret folk practices from all over the European continent. In the extended version of the show, we discuss the good werewolves, the Benandanti, as they fought evil witches of Satan, how this deeply confused the inquisitors who recorded it, and how medical lycanthropy works, alongside the multiple ancient eyewitness accounts of dog-headed people from around the world, early esoteric Christianity, the cenocephaly of St. Christopher, and what it all has to do with Egyptian deities Anubis and, of course, Wepwawet. Thank you, and enjoy the show. What do you call a werewolf with no legs?
What?
Anything you like. He can't chase you. What do you call a sleeping werewolf?
I don't know.
An unaware wolf.
Oh.
I knew it had something to do with aware.
And what did the werewolf eat after getting his teeth cleaned?
What?
The dentist.
Nice.
Hello everybody, and welcome to The Whole Rabbit, where we don't just blame UFOs being under the direction of mischievous fox spirits from medieval Japanese mythology. Nay, we bark even further up the tree to discuss canine spirit possession and shapeshifting from numerous cultures around the globe. What it all has to do with St. Christopher and even modern medical science, because this week we're discussing werewolves. I'm your host, Luke Madrid, also known as Hack Rabbit. I'm joined this week by the marvelous mercurial matron, Mari-sama.
Oh,
The magical mystery man, Melkor 5.
I have returned from the void with carrots.
And the scintillating hematic heterodoxy, Heka Astra.
Hello.
Heka Astra doesn't fear the old blood.
You're supposed to fear the old blood.
Yes.
In our ongoing examination of UFO and alien abduction phenomena, we have uncovered a strong correlation to mythology from around the world, the most compelling of which seems to come from Japan, specifically in the form of fox yokai, which are thought to be imbued with a potent spiritual ability to create mysterious lights in the sky, shapeshift into, and even possess possess human beings, sometimes even at the command of witches who are said to utilize them in a form of demonic sponsorship. Well, some of these ideas may seem novel and fantastic. We shall soon discover they have strong corollaries in Western and European culture, with a number of intriguing overlaps which culminate in the folk mythology of the werewolf.
So I did want to talk about this subject, and I had put it out there for us, not realizing that in the past, the Whole Rabbit did, in fact, already do an episode on werewolves and cenocephaly.
Yes, back in the Andrew and Luke days, we did get very stoned and talk a bit about cenocephaly, and we might have mentioned St. Christopher, but it was really banter heavy, and we're at the point in the show where kind of with the different vibe and the different crew, we can go back and take a deeper dive at things. And it's spooky season, people love werewolves, and I'm starting to realize after researching for this episode, they are hard baked into human culture in more ways than one. There's something about the spiritual aura of dogs that completely permeates what it means to be human and how we think about ourselves. They are man's best friend, after all.
Damn straight.
And I think it has something to do with, they're pretty much the first animal we domesticated, right? Like, they're the first animal that came out of the forest, and we, like, began a thing with them, and we've mutually influenced each other's evolution.
I'm not too sure about that, but I can definitely believe in it, you know.
It's true. They would get fed scraps by the campfire, so they learned to not be afraid of people and fire.
Yeah, I mean, things like that just make sense to me. And, you know, campfires and eating around them is as old as walking humans.
And not to mention the fact that they were domesticated means that they're growing in a symbiotic way. So their species is intertwined with us because, in effect, we created the dog out of a wolf.
I love that meme where it shows a wolf talking to another wolf, and they're like, hey, let's go up to that campfire and get some free food. What's the worst that could happen? And then the next frame, it just shows like a pug with its like tongue sticking out like, Durr?
Yeah. And another aspect too is that early man used the dogs to help them hunt. So we have a bond by doing an activity that's mutually beneficial together. So for me, the concept of the Aetherian, or somebody who thinks that they have an animal spirit or uses that even in magic, you know, you see that all across cultures. It's working in tandem with another animal and in effect melding your own soul with that of an animal so that you become this half man, half animal thing. And that's kind of where I think werewolves is so popular, is because dogs are obviously the most popular pet on the planet.
I mean, if we think of the constellation Orion, and part of our stellar history being whoever was the best hunter was in charge, right? And then Orion has his hunting dogs. So like if you got in really good with these dogs and you knew how to hunt with them, you may have an edge over everybody else. And if you're the best hunter, you may have been the leader as well. So,
and you get to eat first.
Yeah, it's a big part of being human. So when we start to look at werewolves, we have to go really far back. To get started, in terms of European culture, the concept of the werewolf is exceedingly ancient and may have played no small role in the spreading of the Proto-Indo-European culture and language group to its far extreme edges, spanning Ireland all the way down into India. But how so? Well, strangely, it pertains to an archaic manifestation of youth culture in its most primal and violent form. Those familiar with A Clockwork Orange, it would have been the youth culture where Alex DeLarge and his droogs would have, well, fit right in and felt right at home. Owing to its appearance in various cultures, the terminology used to describe these young folks and the concept as a whole is known as choreos, which refers to a way of life reserved for male youth during their initiation into adulthood. You know, the thing we don't do anymore. The term choreos roughly translates to people under arms or warband, and linguistically speaking is cognate with terminology used in its derivative cultures with the Celtic choreos and Germanic hajas, meaning troop or raiding party, alongside the Baltic karias, the Persian kara, and the Lithuanian karas, all similarly meaning army. This is further attested by the ancient Greek term choreanos for army leader and the Brittonic choreanotate for people of the army leader. The concept of the choreos goes as follows and reflects tradition from various ancient cultures, which would become members of the Proto-Indo-European language group. In theory, the choreos were composed of young males in their liminal years of adolescence, a time between the invulnerability of youth and the burgeoning threat of death that attends all of adulthood. Their association with wolves was an obvious one, due due to the wolves' proclivity for hunting in packs, violence, great strength, trickery, and the long-standing mythological association between canines with death and the underworld. Anubis and Kerberos standing as particularly prominent ancient examples. Recruitment into the Koryos was a prolonged initiation ritual into manhood, civic responsibility, and, well, married life. Although young boys from prominent families were more likely to become Koryos, painful trials to enter the group precluded recruitment, and leadership of the pack was determined by rolling dice, which was thought to reflect the will of the gods.
They're just playing Dungeons and Dragons. I want to be a wolf boy. Let me roll some dice.
This is one of those examples of where divination is seen as fair. Random chance is seen as fair because it's an expression of the god's will. So this is like Rufio is Rufio because he rolled well that first day, you know? And isn't that a thing in D&D? You roll to get your stats?
Yeah.
You could play that way if you want.
Well, this is like rolling to be the party/guild leader for the rest of your conceivable, I guess, adolescence. The most famous of all of these leaders was, of course, the dreaded Corn Pop, who notoriously led a gang of very bad dudes. Now, this leader figure was known as the Koryonos, and the other members pledged to die and kill for him. He was regarded as their master in a rite of passage, but also their employer, since the young warriors served as his bodyguards and protectors. Rufio, Rufio. Now, the average troop size would vary between 2 and 20, and this group of essentially kids would be left to fend for themselves on the outskirts of the host society, often with nothing but a weapon, utility belt, and of course, a wolf pelt for clothing. Now, besides donning a wolf pelt, members of the Koryos would adopt a new name that often included something pertaining to wolves or dogs, and would aid their transformation into a wolf person. The operative idea being, while on active duty, the Koryos would transform to live as wolves outside the legal expectation of the host society, hunting beasts, reciting and memorizing heroic poetry, pillaging property, raiding villages, ambushing men, and assaulting the ladies, so long as they were not members of the host society. Doing so usually, of course, under the cover of night, which is something like specific to them. From what I understand, that's been a no-no in terms of like civilized war for a long time. Like, you don't just raid people at night. It's rude. But that's how these kids roll. They would put on their wolf pelt and just pounce on people like Little Red Riding Hood.
Sounds so badass. I would join that gang.
It sounds fun, right? Like, this is what you have to worry about your kid going out and doing at a certain age or running into these sorts of people.
It does feel pretty empowering as a 30-year-old male myself, you know? Like, yeah, let's just go out and everything up and burn and hunt and protect this dude because I like him.
I do what I want.
It's my body. Now, this makes the Koryos, in essence, the original werewolves. For these young boys, the duty was seasonal. It concluded at the height of the summer solstice, and it saw them return briefly to the host society where they would behave as law-abiding citizens. I thought it was interesting, the idea of the werewolf, like, it happens during the full moon, which is like when these Koryos would probably do their raiding, and it was also seasonal. Like, some of the time, they're just normal people. You don't gotta worry about them. The other time, they're like these ferocious, bloodthirsty, killing and maiming beasts.
Well, I also think it serves to spiritually purge your system of needing or wanting or wondering about doing that. And there's like a social place in society for that to occur, legally speaking.
Yes, because in society, they were relieved of ever considering themselves or their vicious deeds in the field as, quote, criminal. And the way they conceptualize this is they were not really boys when they were out there in the field. They were wolves. They were transformed into non-human, killing machines endowed with a ferocious bloodlust, just like the werewolf.
Sick.
And I thought it was worth mentioning, in various cultures, it seems to suggest that the season was up after the summer solstice, which, as we discussed in like the last few episodes, corresponds roughly to the dog days in ancient Egypt. And we know the proceedings of the dog days where they'd sacrifice a dog was supposed to pertain to both the end of the year and the beginning of the new one, the flooding of the Nile. And it's like when the summer rains came, it was like over. You know what I mean? Like there's the on season and the off season. And I couldn't help but think of the Koryos in relation to, of course, The End by the Doors. Lost in a Roman wilderness of pain. All the children are insane. All the children are insane. Waiting for the summer rain. So it's like these kids are out there being crazy. They're out killing stuff. ride the King's Highway West. And then, the summer solstice comes and they're like, all right, it's over now. We're dead for now. Now, these years of initiation into manhood would ritually conclude around the age of 20 when the boy was considered fully grown and culminated with the burning of his old wolf pelt clothing, which often accompanied being crowned in marriage and ownership of land to which he was now entitled, having helped expand the host society's reach. Often, to avoid such brutal harassment, other societies readily offered themselves up to become a part of this host society, which helped expand its borders rapidly. This is partially how some historians have said that Proto-Indo-European culture spread itself so rapidly, and its associated language group, which we find pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, and I can't help but think of the watchdogs of Pharaon from Dark Souls 3 when you're talking about the Kurios. The watchdogs of Pharaon, they protect this certain forest after they make a allegiance in a covenant to this giant wolf that's sleeping. And when you join that religion in the game, you get automatically summoned to this forest whenever somebody who's not a member walks into that area of the map on their playthrough.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, and the whole thing is an homage to the hunters from Bloodborne, of course. I'm going to try not to talk about Bloodborne and the Beastmen and the dogs in that game too much in this episode, but From Software is all about this. This is why they also made the game Chrome Hounds.
Oh, that makes sense.
You have the new Armored Core game where you play as a hound and your handler is named Walter and he sends you out on missions. It's a great little bit of info there into some of From Software's knowledge about this really cool connection to the Golden Bow, I guess, is ultimately where I find this really fascinating, but also in connection to these wolves and hounds and dogs. And, you're on a mission of sorts. You got a job to do,
Well, the Golden Bow thing is going to come up. And it's kind of in that ballpark, you could say. All this stuff is in that area of human experience and history. And it has a lot to do with our dark side and also the dark side of what it means to be a man, quote unquote. If you want to think about it this way, the werewolf is the boiled down prototypical toxic masculinity in its purest form. If you're going to start flinging around political terminologies and ideas.
I don't believe you. You got to explain that to me now. This is actually really good.
Well, I mean, what's the whole what does Barbie say in the movie? She's like, oh, now that I'm in the real world, I feel this hint of violence everywhere. Something bad could just happen to me. And well, that's the idea behind the Kurios. A bunch of dudes in a wolf pelt could just come up and bonk you in the head and take your stuff or kill you and raid your whole village. And this is their coming of age ceremony. This is how you become a man, is to participate in this violence, and just let it all hang out, or die doing it. And to be fair, because this is so hard baked into our culture, we can expect, and I'll explain right now, the Nazis were really into this idea. They thought it was fascinating. Now, on that note, it seems worth mentioning that Hitler and the Nazis found this idea of the Kurios, or wolf people, to be particularly enticing as a motif, and they attempted to incorporate it into their memes on more than one occasion. For instance, in 1942, Adolf Hitler named the OKW, the Supreme Military Command, and the OKH, the German Army Command, field headquarters in Vinnytsia in Ukraine, Werewolf. And Hitler, on a number of occasions, used the pseudonym Wolf for himself. It's even suggested that the name Adolf roughly translates to noble wolf. So this is something that he turned over in his mind a lot as part of his identity.
Yeah, he did like to flaunt himself as a chosen one by God or some divine force.
I mean, even the idea of the Hitler Youth is oh, let's get those kids in nature and have them fight each other and play King of the Hill and romp in nature and he's kind of playing with these ideas. Now,
totally. You mentioned the Hitler Youth. It's there are all these young people coming up trying to protect this one dude, just like the Kurios.
And famously, he gives them their knife that they carry with them into war throughout the rest of their life. Now, likewise, Hitler referred to the military command outpost on the Eastern Front as Wolfschanze, commonly rendered in English as Wolf's Lair, although more literally Wolf's Sconce. And that's on the Eastern Front. So, he knew about this. He's oh yeah, so the wolf people are out on the edge of society. They're out there causing chaos and gathering more to the main society, like expanding the borders, which is what he was all about. And then later in 1944, Heinrich Himmler initiated Unternehmen Werewolf, or Operation Werewolf, to create a class of elite commandos intended to operate behind enemy lines and wreak havoc on the Allies. Now, they were a uniformed outfit, right? So they were, dressed as German military, and if they were taken as POWs, they were expected to be treated as POWs. But that was the idea, is that they would go behind enemy lines and just cause chaos, right? Which is in line with this idea of the Choreos. Now, this often is confused with what Joseph Goebbels came up with just a year later, as the Nazis were losing, with Radio Werewolf, which urged the German citizenry to wage guerrilla warfare against the, quote, invaders. And then, secondly, the werewolf speech urging the same, where he's like, oh, you gotta kill these allies when they come into Germany, and like, never surrender and never give up. It's because they had this idea like firmly embedded in their memeplex. So if some of it tastes a little unpalatable, it's because, quote, civilized society doesn't do this anymore.
But sirs, missus, I see that it's wrong. It's wrong because it's like against society. It's wrong because everybody has the right to live and be happy without being told, chopped and knifed.
No, boy, you really must leave it to us. And be cheerful about it.
Now, back to the classical Choreos, their transformation was, well, clearly symbolic, but it carried with it a noticeable change in behaviors. The frenzy would endow them with seemingly supernatural ferocity, strength, fearlessness, and resistance to pain. Sometimes these frenzies were aided by ecstatic performance, dance, and sometimes the use of drugs. In fact, the Indo-European term for a mad attack, is common to Vedic, Germanic, and Iranian traditions. It is thought that the Norse tradition of berserker rage, Berserksganger, found its origin in this ancient tradition. Furthermore, the ancient Greek terminology lysa, a derivation of lykos, meaning wolf, was used to indicate the warrior's martial fury and signified the soldiers temporarily becoming as wolves in their mad rage. So, it's hard baked into our language. When the Greeks were explaining what made a soldier badass, it was this wolfishness, and it was etymologically rooted in this idea.
I mean, it must have been quite the sight to see the ancient world and how large the packs of animals were before modern technology and us conquering nature like we have today. There must have been a ton of fucking wolves in one pack, and many packs that were large. So, just being a person watching a large pack of wolves use tactics and brain power to achieve a goal and then invoke that energy as a human, it just makes a lot of sense why they would even create the language that itself based off of that idea. It's rooted in their same word for wolf or wolf-like activities, Well,
because they're ferocious, right? They're frightening, but they also work as a team. They flank.
Yeah.
They sometimes will have a pack leader. And there's just lots of reasons why you would relate it to war. And then, of course, if dogs were important for early hunts, and the hunters are the same people that were the first soldiers, well, it's all there.
I mean, I would imagine humans probably got to domesticate wolves because they started following wolves. Before they domesticated them, they used them for the same reason we would use a hunting dog. It's like, well, the dogs know where to go. They got a better nose than us. Let's just follow the dog tracks and we're going to find a bunch of shit. And then the dogs probably noticed that the humans were really tactically sound, and the ones that escaped the wolves got caught in the humans' nets, and the arrows hit those animals that tried to flee. And it was a bigger feast for the wolves too. And I'm sure there was a moment where it was just a bunch of humans and wolves sharing the same meal on the same, essentially battlefield and conquering the elements together. It's really pretty badass. I can't say anything else.
It really is. I feel like it'd be worth mentioning, I think to Odin, he had ravens or crows as well.
Yeah, the Norse or the Norwegian word for wolf is Olver. It's also a band, a black metal band that turned into an electronic band.
Oh, that'll come up. And the reason I brought up the crows is that you could follow them too. They would maybe indicate to you where the animals were. And wolves and crows have that association. They interact with animals in nature. They can give you a sign that something is nearby, and they may have aided in the early hunters' struggle to kill and find food. And so we see this Choreos concept evolve and mature into different manifestations in different cultures. So, for instance, from 17 to 20 years old, the Athenian ephebos had to live during 2 years in the ephebia. They were relegated to the edges of society, and they were given a marginal status without full citizenship. Their duty was to guard the limit of their community during peaceful times, generally as guards of the fields, forests, and orchards, but they'd also lead ambushes and skirmishes in wartime. The ephebos wore black tunics and were lightly armed. Likewise, Koryos were often associated with the color black due to their proclivity to fight at night and their association with chthonic or subterranean forces, as an essential part of their training was the traditional hunt. It was conducted at night and with the use of snares and traps. Sometimes this extended to the enemy, of course. In the case of the Spartan Cryptia, it was even a human hunt, as I just suggested. Because of this, there seems to be a connection with the Koryos and the European motif of the wild hunt, where denizens of the dead would rise up to ravage the countryside at the direction of a mighty hunter king, who would be personified as anyone from Hades to Jupiter to Gwynop Nude to, well, Satan himself. When we take all this into consideration, the nickname of devil dogs given to the U.S. Marines by German forces during World War I was, well, it was particularly ideal, even flattering. And of course, it wouldn't surprise me if Hideo Kojima had all this in mind when he named, quote, Foxhound in the Metal Gear Solid franchise.
Oh, we'll talk about Kojima later.
Because it's all there. I mean, if we want to relate Anubis, the ancient Egyptian god of the dead, you know, to all this, like, yeah, devil dogs. They come from the underworld. They attack. They're in black. They're frightening. And so, like, when you have like a bunch of like Teutonic folks calling your Marines devil dogs, it's like, huh, well, thank you. You're the guys who invented that, I thought. That means we made it. If our Marines can be called devil dogs, then like we're up to snuff on the global stage, you know, in terms of like,
yeah, we're gaining. It's like respect.
Yes.
I didn't have the balls to join.
Now, due to this long-standing association in the Proto-Indo-European language group, it's not uncommon for various cultures to ascribe a negative connotation to dogs or wolves. One example being the Hittite legal term of wolf, referring to a lawless, murdering brigand. It was when Christianity began to proliferate that these older pagan traditions began to transform into the myth of the murderous werewolf. Although a cursory look at classical Greek mythology reveals that society had begun to move towards that idea already. In fact, in Ovid's Metamorphosis, written while Christ was still young, it makes a strong connection between lycanthropy and Jupiter's decision to flood the earth, ultimately to punish humanity for its lawlessness and sin. In this regard, the Christianization of the bloodthirsty, god-hating werewolf was firmly established in pagan culture. As the story goes, Jupiter was sitting high above the world on Mount Olympus, boiling with righteous indignation for humanity's fallen state. Brief glimpses of Saturn's golden age seemed to flash through his imagination before recounting a gradual decline of morality during the Age of Silver and seemingly all at once during the Age of Bronze. It is now, during the continued decline of humanity during the Age of Iron, that Jupiter begins to lament the problem to his council of gods, his disappointment apparently blossoming from a recent encounter he had with a human king named, and I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing this wrong, Lycaon. And it was this interaction that tipped the scales irrevocably towards his impending wrath. Seeing that Jupiter is already planning how he intends to kill off humanity, the gods begin to clamor for punishment upon this Lycaon, who has incited such ferocity in their king Jupiter. But with a gesture, the other gods immediately become silent, as Jupiter reassures them that this particular mortal has already been punished, and that he will now commence to share with them the gossip. Jupiter, having heard news of humanity's growing proclivity towards evil, deigned to disguise himself as a mortal and walk among humanity to see for himself. That sound familiar? Until then, Jupiter had sincerely hoped it was just social media exaggerating such claims, but he quickly discovered the truth of the matter for himself. Scarcely had Jupiter arrived when he realized the situation was far worse than the rumors suggested. Upon human feet, Jupiter began to make his way to the cool pine tree scented mountains of Arcadia, named Lycaeus, where the peak was held sacred to both himself and Pan. Not one to arrive unannounced, Jupiter sent many signs to the inhabitants of Lycaeus to suggest that a god was soon to arrive. When Jupiter strolled into town, disguised as a mortal though he was, the multitudes were quick to meet him with praise and worship. However, their king, Lycaon, and his sons, too numerous to name, there were like 50 of them, were utterly impious and quick to ridicule the people, loudly proclaiming his intent to prove once and for all if this visitor was either god or mortal. Jupiter, knowing as he was, correctly surmised that Lycaon was planning to settle the matter by attempting to kill him while he slept. But this was not enough for Lycaon, who wished bitterly to disgrace him first by secretly serving Jupiter with human entrails during dinner. Depending on the version of the myth, Lycaon opted to kill his own son, Nyctimus, as a source for the human meat, but according to Ovid, the unlucky person was a prisoner of war from Molossi, whose throat was slashed with a knife, boiling and grilling his innards before placing them on the table before Jupiter. Now, this really upset Jupiter. No sooner had the plate touched the table than Jupiter smote the god sacred to the household in a vengeful flame, sending Lycaon running away in utter terror. In the words of Ovid's Jupiter,
he himself ran in terror, and reaching the silent fields howled aloud, frustrated of speech, foaming at the mouth, and greedy as ever for killing. He turned against the sheep, still delighted in blood. His clothes became bristling hair. His arms became legs. He was a wolf, but kept some vestige of his former shape. There were the same gray hairs, the same violent face, and the same glittering eyes, the same savage image. One house has fallen, but others deserve to also. Wherever the earth extends, the avenging furries rule. You would think men. I know. I was gonna.
Yeah, I think it's Furies, but for this story, let's just keep it.
You would think men were sworn to crime. Let them all pay the penalty they deserve, and quickly. That is my intent.
Now, having finally heard this tale, the gods, sad as they are that no humans will be lighting sweet-smelling incense upon their altars again anytime soon, agree that something terrible must nonetheless be done to humanity. Fearing that he'll inadvertently initiate a prophesied outcome by accidentally burning Olympus down, Jupiter avoids using his lightning bolts and decides to flood the earth with the help of rainbow-draped Iris and his brother mighty Neptune. So we'll come back to this lightning thing later, but I think it's interesting that this wolf situation corresponds to the flooding of the earth because, of course, we discussed before in ancient Egypt, the killing of the dogs on the dog days of summer correspond to the flooding of the Nile. So that's like a little bit of a wink and a nod. But we can also see how, well, it's not really a wink and a nod to the future, but Christianity in the Bible would cash in on a lot of these ideas, like God walking around in human form, and the people worshiping him, but the king being like, no, no, no. And then,
and the close association with wolves and werewolves and the moon, and how the moon has an effect on the water level. I mean, it's too much to talk about in terms of water and wolves, it seems. Even though it on the surface, it doesn't seem like they're connected, but they totally are.
Dude, even just from my experience in history as a human, when my dad fought in Vietnam, he fought with the sea wolves. That was his attack squadron he was a part of. And then he even had a dog name they gave him, because I'm sure that was the thing when you're in the sea wolves, they give you a dog name, just like the Curios. And his name was Mad Dog Madrid. So
damn, that's cool. Man, your dad sounds like he was a real diamond dog.
Well, he was. I mean, he was in with a group of dudes who weren't really known for partying. They took their job really seriously. And strangely enough, another coincidence, you couldn't really depend on the army or the Marines to go take their helicopters out at night. Only the sea wolves would do that. So it was fitting to their name, right? Because the wolves fight at night. They ambush at night.
Awesome.
Yeah, go Google Scramble the Sea Wolves if you want to watch a documentary about them. It's for free. It's out there in the open now, and you don't even have to steal it. It's just, you can just Google it. But let's continue.
But okay, so I didn't know that there was werewolf trials. Is this like the witch trials?
Yes, it is, and they go together. Now, Ovid's Metamorphosis, as I mentioned, was written during the lifetime of Christ, and it was during this time the popular image of the classical werewolf became cemented into the popular lexicon, already firmly established as the baleful enemy of God and representing all that is ferocious and terrible in humanity. As such, the hard belief in werewolves would only emerge near the late medieval, early modern period between the 15th and 18th centuries, running in tandem with the witch craze and its subsequent trials. Naturally, it was assumed that the crime of transforming into a wolf was thought to be due to witchcraft or a pact made with the devil. In these cases, the charge of becoming a werewolf would come on the heels of a real animal attack, or perhaps what we would now call the work of a serial killer of the disorganized variety, meaning they were extremely brutal, impulsive, left a grisly mess in their wake, sometimes even committing cannibalism. A good example of a modern disorganized serial killer, the guy who got caught by the crowds in LA, Richard Ramirez, the guy with the hair.
Yeah. He was at a liquor store in East LA, and they had I think a wanted poster in there, and some of the customers noticed that it was Richard Ramirez, and they chased him down the street and beat the shit out of him.
Like a big whole crowd. And that doesn't usually happen in serial killer cases.
It's the coolest fucking way to take out an infamous serial killer. Like
It's
the
very
community was-
cinematic. It's like what would happen in Seinfeld.
It's like a fucking movie. Yeah. It's just like, hey, you're wrong neighborhood, dog. Like, we're going to beat you to death.
So, like, if you took Richard Ramirez and put him back in the witch trial days, they'd be like, oh, that guy's a werewolf. And he'd be like, yes, I am. And he would have leaned into it. So that's kind of like the blueprint for what werewolves really were, probably. Now, occasionally, as I suggested, the accused would even confess of transforming into a werewolf, as in the case of the polygyny werewolf trial in France circa 1521. Maybe it's polygamy. This is the episode where I mispronunciate everything, so I'm sorry. I know there's like a handful of you out there that's like, oh, why'd he say it like that? I'm so sorry.
And if you're in the Discord, you have the right to go in there and be like, hey, you said that wrong, and we'll laugh with you.
I'll just say it
sorry.
correctly. Yeah, if you tell me how to say it correctly from now on, I will, but sorry it wasn't before recording the episode. Now, in this case of the polygamy werewolves, 2 men were brought up on charges of witchcraft and cannibalism and brought before the Inquisitor General for the Diocese of Besançon, France. These 2 men were Pierre Burgot, sometimes known as Peter the Great due to his size, and Michael Verdun, as the story goes. Before even reaching trial, Peter made a full confession, as Peter would recount. It had been 19 years ago that while shepherding his sheep, a great storm descended, scattering the flock. In a panic, Peter got the idea to enlist others to help him look, and no sooner had he intended to seek assistance than 3 mysterious horsemen robed in black arrived to inquire about his troubles before Peter could say much. One of the horsemen promised him 3 things. 1, that he would find his sheep. 2, that he would be given money. And 3, that he would receive these things if he pledged to serve only the horseman's master. He would later learn the horseman's name was Moiset. As everyone knows, never trust a man named Moiset.
That's true.
Burgot agreed to these conditions, and it was agreed that they should meet again in 5 days. Shortly after Moiset and his entourage of, ringwraiths departed, Burgot did in fact find all his sheep. 5 days later, he went to attend this meeting that they had agreed upon and learned that Moiset was a servant of the devil. Agreeing to the terms offered, Burgot swore allegiance to the devil and renounced Christianity on the spot. To seal the deal, Burgot kissed Moiset's left hand, which he described as black and ice cold as that of a corpse.
Interesting. I mean, esoteric stuff real quick. Left hand path, dark side, corpse, it's cold, it's bad.
It's black. Yeah, that's a lot going on in his story. Like, they're pretty much ring wraiths.
Yeah, it's some Twin Peaks in there too, if you're talking about a ring. But we can't talk about that.
Now, for the next 2 years, Burgot went about his life tending to his sheep and worshiping the devil. As favorably as things were going, Burgot eventually grew tired of worshiping Satan and found himself attending church regularly once more. That is, until a fellow villager, Michael Verdun, got a hold of him and convinced Peter to resume the devil worship. Michael suggested that if he ever wanted to get flush with cash, he needed to do more than just kiss Moiset's hand. He'd need to undergo a full-on satanic ritual in the woods during the dead of night. It was during this ritual that Peter Burgot would undergo his first transformation. Peter describes this ritual in his own words. In a wood near Chastel Chardon, we met with many others whom I did not recognize. We danced, and each had in his or her hand a green taper with a blue flame. Still under the delusion that I should obtain money, Michael persuaded me to move with the greatest celerity, and in order to do this, after I had stripped myself, he smeared me with a salve, and I believed myself then to be transformed into a wolf. I was at first somewhat horrified at my 4 wolf's feet and the fur with which I was covered all at once, but I found I could now travel with the speed of the wind. This could not have taken place without the help of our powerful master, who was present during our excursion, though I did not perceive him till I had recovered my human form. He's talking about the devil. Michael did the same as myself when we had been 1 or 2 hours in this condition of metamorphosis. Michael smeared us again, and quick as thought, we resumed our human forms. The salve was given us by our masters. To me, it was given by Moiset. To Michael, by his own master, Guyamen. And whenever werewolves come up, this mention of the salve comes up quite a bit. So if you are an herbalist, you got to go out there and you got to make the salve, okay? I don't know what you got to find. I don't know what flowers you need, but you just got to put them in a little mortar and pestle. And if you get it just right, you could turn your damn self into a werewolf.
I'm pretty sure it's pronounced salve.
Salve.
I use both ways, but
Knock, knock. Having trouble with your hair? Nothing a healthy dollop of salve couldn't take care of.
But yeah, if anybody finds a recipe, please contact me and let me know what it is.
Dude, I have a ton of salve recipes. It kind
No,
of
for the
depends.
werewolf one in particular.
Can you turn us into a werewolf, Hecka?
Well, I mean, I can't make any promises, but I'm sure I could put something together.
Could you make a salve that we smear on ourselves and then we believe ourselves wholeheartedly to be your Dogekin?
I can say with more confidence, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, best I can do is turn you into a rabbit.
I can do that if I eat enough fungus. Now, unlike numerous other confessions of the era, Burgot claimed to experience no exhaustion following the transformation, and that he and Verdun went out numerous times to terrorize the countryside. He recounted that in one case, Verdun had attacked and torn to pieces a woman who was innocently gathering peas. When a man attempted to rescue her, they killed him too. In another, they attacked and killed and ate a girl of 4, leaving behind a single arm. Verdun claimed her flesh was exceptionally delicious. The pair claimed to strangle yet another girl, drinking her blood afterwards, and Burgot even confessed to attacking in human form a 9-year-old girl who had been weeding her garden, snapping her neck as she begged for her life. One of his...
Damn.
Yeah, it's immoral. One of his victims included a goat who he had bitten on the throat before killing it with a knife. I think he got the order reversed. You want to kill the goat with a knife and then bite its neck, not the other way around.
I think he was just like, I'm going to kill this goat. Oh,
Wait, I can't.
I think he's like, I'm going to kill this wolf with my mouth. And then like, he couldn't do it.
He's like, oh yeah, I'm a human. I gotta use my tools. Fuck.
Just knees him in the balls. While confessing to the Inquisitor, he claimed that becoming naked had been a prerequisite for his transformation, but not for Verdun. He could not explain what happened to his wolf fur following the transformation, but Verdun corroborated all of Burgot's claims.
And this makes so much sense if you think about Dungeons and Dragons. And when you can transform into an animal as a druid, you have to have absolutely no metal, no armor on you, and you have to have the pelt of the animal that you're trying to transform into on you, touching your skin. So
Yeah, and even in like pop culture depictions of werewolves, they usually transform and they burst out of their clothing, leaving shreds, and when they transform back, they're ashamed and naked.
Yeah, all of that's in the soup. It seems that this whole needing a wolf pelt thing, that goes all the way back to the Corios, because they would burn the damn thing when they'd return to civilization. That was like burning their wolf self and it would go away. And
right.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to take this stuff like in a literal sense, like, and you believe that you can turn into a wolf, I would start with some of this info right here. You gotta get the salve, have some fur, talk to Mari. Maybe she can meet you at a con.
It's more of the transformation of your spirit or soul into that of a wild beast, where you have no conditioning of being civilized or...
And then likewise, the Corios, they would send him out naked because the whole point of it was to survive. It's not unlike the wilderness training in Starship Troopers, right? They got to go out naked and survive. It's like almost hard baked into our culture. And so if you're looking for like a psychological reason why these people would say stuff like this, it may be part of their ancestral memory. It may correspond to that mental state in general, and maybe they're pulling from the collective unconscious to give authorities these stories, because it's not literally true, but it's true in terms of ancestral memory, perhaps.
Yeah, and allowing that memory or the original spirit of that to take over your body and use it as a vessel, that's also kind of what transformation is trying to show visually and like metaphorically. And I mean, also furries tend to be extremely attracted to the concept of transformation in general. I mean, that literally is what anthropomorphism comes out of, is like the middle state of both of those things being melded together. And even a lot of like in lycanthropy and like shapeshifting, the beast that comes out of that retains a kind of humanoid figure. So it's like transforming into a 4-legged animal that acts like a normal animal in the forest. It's about harnessing that spirit and that power and transforming it into a new being or beast. You channel it into your body and use it there.
I think it's worth mentioning that we give furries a really hard time in modern society, and it's probably
You
because
should.
of some shameful things that have been done on the internet by them and in real life.
But there's something to it, though. And for me, in a way, I think that, yeah, they're acting silly. Yeah, it's kind of delusional. And it gets even crazier. Like, there's other kin that think that they're literal planets or like inanimate objects, like cars and airplanes. It could get kind of unhinged, this transformation fixation. At the end of the day, they're living their best life and they're having fun doing it and expressing themselves. And I think that a lot of modern humans, because they find this kind of behavior silly, but it's also very therapeutic for your soul and becoming the best person you can be, is to allow these impulses or expressions to come out in a creative and ultimately constructive way for yourself and society.
But it is interesting to consider that, you know, the whole furries in the military, it's like, well, those two used to be the same thing. But also,
Yeah, that's a thing. That's a thing.
right. And then progress a little bit further. By the time of Ovid and the time when Jesus Christ was walking the earth, it was well established that the wolf person was the symbol of social and moral decline. You know, so that's also hard baked in there too.
They do have a social order wolves. They can also act as independent agents, and that's what makes them dangerous.
There might be a lot more to say about Beowulf in regards to this episode's subject, but it's kind of interesting. In Beowulf's first showdown with Grendel, who is arguably like on the outskirts of society, but still living within the domain of society, Beowulf, he decides he wants to fight Grendel naked and weaponless to show his like prowess over him. And in that very kingdom where they're fighting, he eventually does become the king of that land because he kills Grendel and he chops off his arm. I think it's his left arm too. Like there's some correlations, I'm sure, to analyze in Beowulf, but it's also a symbol of moral decline because Grendel was the son of the king before Beowulf, and then the new kin of the new king is a dragon, and like it's the decline of the king's moral compass of like being tempted by this cave demon that is Angelina Jolie for some reason in the movie. But I just find it a little interesting, because it's like Beowulf understands, this stripping down to a naked state invokes this like supreme beast form that is unstoppable, and it's the most fair grounds to fight on.
I mean, even in boxing and wrestling, you're not allowed to have weapons,
Yeah.
and you can't like kick in the nuts and stuff. Like there's a certain this kind of, I guess, almost primal fight, and that to me is also the fairest. It's like the foundation of any kind of competition.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if you look at Beowulf, it's full of wolf stuff in regards to this episode, and it's probably worthy of its own episode analysis, but
Well, his name does end in wolf, Beowulf.
Yes.
And if you read John Gardner's Grendel, which is from the 70s, it's from the perspective of the bad guy, Grendel. And at least in that rendition of the tale, Grendel is an ancestor of Cain.
Oh.
So in that version, Grendel is carrying the mark of Cain, and that relates him back to, of course, social decline. The first human to kill another human.
Too much. It's too much. Memes converging.
So to follow up on this whole idea of relating the wolf and the canine to the decline of morality, many of the accusations during these witch trials were remarkably similar to how fox users, quote unquote, were treated in Japan, even during the same time period. For instance, unlike Burgot and Verdun, some claimed or were just accused of the ability to possess or bewitch wolves to act a certain way. As we learned 2 episodes ago, this was a serious concern in medieval Japan, which greatly maligned and regularly lynched accused sorcerers known as Kitsune Tsukai, or fox users. And these were the folks thought to command foxes to do their nefarious bidding. In cases native to Europe, wolf charming often fell in with a number of other charges of sorcery or witchcraft, which usually involved claims of riding upon wolves to attend a witch's sabbath. I couldn't help but notice both like the cat familiar and the wolf riding was involved in Capcom's Monster Hunter, which is essentially about hunting yokai. So like once again, we have some Japanese game developers who've like already figured all this out and just put it in their video games.
I also can't help but think about Andros, the Goetic spirit, who rides upon a black wolf with the head of an owl. Very fearsome when you consider all aspects of his symbol.
Dude, Andros from Star Fox.
I think it's present there too, Mari. I agree.
Oh my gosh.
How does that work in Japan? You just have to have like a 200 IQ and a master's in mythology to make video games in Japan? Like, is that how that works? I don't know.
Make some good stories.
Now, while it's tempting to imagine this in a literal sense, as many back during the witch trials likely did, others, well, they believed it was more subtle, and it seems to occur more in line with what we know about occultism in altered states today. For instance, it's not difficult to imagine a would-be sorcerer entering a dream state and traveling in the dream state as a wolf to a predetermined location in the astral dimension. Now, there might even be some listeners of this show who do such things regularly. As such, donning a wolf skin might just be, well, part of this practice. It's been suspected, and of course, maybe white people aren't supposed to talk about it, but the skinwalker of Native American tradition is said to accomplish their transformations by wearing the skin of the animal they want to transform into, and depending on who you ask, they either turn into that animal or they possess an animal in their surroundings. And of course, we know that skinwalkers are like the bad sorcerers, the ones who use their magic for personal gain instead of the community, and so they're maligned and like shunned from society, just like the fox users and just like these supposed witches from European tradition. It's all there. Now, to draw from my own life, I once knew a Satanist who, even though putting very little stock in magical or paranormal occurrences, had one really great story about transferring his consciousness into a cat while under the influence of Benadryl. He walked over to his friend's house, entered through an open window, and spent the evening sitting on her lap while enjoying pets and watching Godzilla on TV with her. Now, although at first he thought this may have just been a hallucinated experience, his friend surprised him by corroborating that this exact stray cat had in fact entered her room through the window and took to her lap for pets and watching Godzilla.
I love Godzilla. Godzilla is my god.
Yes, in Malagor's case, he forgoes turning into the cat and just transfers his consciousness into Godzilla.
I was bullied as a kid by a family member and abused, and I prayed to Godzilla to come and kill him.
Aw, bless your heart.
And in a way, I turned into Godzilla and I crushed my enemies myself, and I'm happy with this result.
So you're a dragon user.
Yes, but I like dogs.
You like cats too, I'm pretty sure.
And yeah, animals are awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, somehow the algorithm seems to think that our podcast is all about animals. I wonder why. So we get a lot of like very good animal owners and pet havers. We even have a channel in our Discord specifically for posting pictures of your pet. They're all adorable. Go figure.
Yeah, if you want to join us, please join the whole rabbit support.
Now, to wrap things up for the free show, in terms of European folklore, in Bavaria, this ability was said to be possessed of a sorcerer known as a wolf singer or a wolf banner, which were usually just old dudes who sold charms known as wolfsagen, which were thought to prevent or drive off wolf attacks. These charms were usually atotropaic and depicted a ferocious-looking wolf, or wolves, sometimes a wolf's head, like the charm the Witcher wears.
Oh, yeah.
So this might be a reference to that, because, I mean,
Yeah.
the Witcher does, like, weird witchy stuff outside the church, and that's something he might do.
Well, his job is to hunt monsters.
Yeah, so it's, yeah. Now, as you might imagine, the witch trials were not kind to the creators of these charms, which were often accused of wolfbond, or possessing the wolves to attack. In the case of Thomas Heisner, aged 84, under duress of torture, he confessed to knowing how to perform wolfbond by having learned it some 50 years earlier in Innsbruck, when he made a living performing it for the peasantry. He claimed to be able to call the wolves to attack a specific head of cattle, and to have done this a total of 10 times over a period of 40 years, having sold his soul to the devil in order to learn the charm.
Worth it.
But if you'd like to hear the rest of this episode, where we talk about the good guy werewolves, believe it or not, medical lycanthropy, cenocephaly, which means dog-headed people from all over the globe, St. Christopher, Anubis, and our homeboy Wepwawet, please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit. Your monthly donation of just $5 will not only get you immediate access to all our extended versions of our entire library of episodes available now natively on Spotify, fully integrated. I'll send you a 5x5 high-quality vinyl sticker of our big Baphomet bunny cover art and the secret keys to our Discord server where you can show us your cute, fluffy animals. So go check it out. Thank you, everybody. Eat carrots and shoot lasers.
Pew, pew, pew.